Hello, and good evening, and welcome back. And our today's agenda is a little bit of a critical thinking introduction discussion, going through a few questions, and look at the process and basically get our critical thinking, critical reasoning process get kickstarted. And it is a very important tool. It's a real life tool. It is a skill which is applied in any domain, whether you are a neurosurgeon or maybe the cricket captain. You will need your reasoning skills or analytical skills, and it is a big chunk of your VARC expertise, because the reading skills part is reasonably easy, but the reading challenges come with critical reasoning challenges mixed together. So if you want to get better at reading, you want to improve your reading scores, you also need to fix your critical thinking foundations. And essentially, just going through maybe 50 to 100 questions will be more than enough in terms of helping you understand what the game is all about. So that is what we'll do today. Ideally, I had shared some material earlier to finish a basic video, as well as the questions for this particular the question sheet for this particular discussion earlier. So I hope everybody has that, and they are willing and ready to participate in the process, right? So drop me a hello, tell me if the sound is okay, and then we'll start in a minute or two. The I'll share the Telegram link where the file has been posted via the chat. I'm posting it now. Find the sheet, though the sheet will also be visible on the screen, so we can also work together using that. Audio is clear and good to go. Now the second step would be to find the sheet. Find the sheet so that you have those 15 questions. Today we'll do maybe 5 to 7, uh, and we'll do it very slowly and gently. But for more practice and generally having the reference material with you, head to the Telegram thingy and find the document. Let me share the document on Telegram once again. Okay, so let's get started. Let me share the screen with you guys. And before we dive into the challenges, and in fact, we can try out these questions without any pre theory as well. A little bit of common sense, translating and understanding the paragraph well. And I think most people will be able to tackle it without any extensive foundation as such. A little bit of idea what an argument is, what we mean by strengthening, weakening, or even those terms can be learned from the question itself, right? So what I want to do is first of all show you that how these arguments, what we are going to do today is argument analysis, and these arguments are everywhere. And what is a basic argument, right? And again, some of you might have gone through the foundation videos or the whole maybe more videos in that. So some of you might already know what we mean by an argument, but I have some data on screen. I have x plus y equal to 7, and I say and thus or therefore x is equal to 3. This is an argument. Some part of it is missing. Can you tell me what is missing? Somebody tells you that x plus y is equal to 7, and therefore he's saying x is equal to 3. Can you tell me what is the missing link? Yeah, x plus y is equal to 7, and I say therefore x is equal to 3. What is the missing link? Virat says 4, but what 4? What do you mean by 4? waiting is the oddest part. X plus y is equal to 7 and thus x is equal to 3. What is the missing piece of information? How has the speaker, the author, the writer gone from that x plus y is equal to 7 and jumped to x is equal to 3? Is there a missing link in between? Right, so given y is equal to 4 was the missing link. That means in this story, there was something that the writer or the author or the speaker assumed, he believed it to be true. And believing y is equal to 4 is necessary to come to the conclusion that x is equal to 3. Thus or a therefore is a very common indicator of a conclusion that this is what I'm finally trying to say, right? So thus and therefore was telling me that x is equal to 3 is my conclusion, and this conclusion was based on a reason which was not given or stated out explicitly, and the reason or the data point missing was that y is equal to 4. If I assume y is equal to 4, the whole story becomes perfectly all right. Let me do that, and I say this will become much better. I say and y is equal to 4 and thus x is equal to 3. Much better, right? Now if I look at this, the first piece of information, reason 1, y is equal to 4 is reason 2. If I combine these two reasons, I come to the conclusion that x is equal to 3. So this reason plus reason is equal to the conclusion is the argument structure. There might be very many reasons. Reason 1 plus reason 2 plus reason 3 plus reason 4 is equal to the conclusion. Or reason 1 to reason 3 leads to conclusion 1, which is the reason for the next conclusion, and so on and so forth. But at any given level, an argument is made up of a reason and conclusion. And what happens in the real world, as you just saw, a lot of times one of the reasons might not be mentioned at all, but the reason is there. Without that reason or using that logic, you cannot come to x is equal to 3. So such a missing reason is known as an assumption. Why spending so much time on this definition of an assumption? Because that is where most of the challenges lie. What do we mean by an assumption? It's a missing link. So notice we were jumping from x plus y is equal to 7 to x is equal to 3, but now I have a step. If I go to y equal to 4, then going to x is equal to 3 is very, very easy for me. So let's try one more argument and connect it to the maths thing. And also notice that if you have been doing any sort of basic maths also, you've already been playing with logic. So logic is not going to be the challenge. I think the exam challenge is mostly going to be comprehension. My contention is also, if I give you any of these questions in detail, translated well, most people tend to get the answers right. So that would be another thing. So, and this is a everyday argument. Ramesh went to St. Stephen's. He must be really smart. So this is what your uncle, your aunt, one of your friends will say, like in the argument, that I know he is smart. And what is the reason for his smartness? That he has gone to St. Stephen's. Is there a missing link in the story? Is there a missing link in this story? Ramesh went to St. Stephen's. He must be really smart. And the way to think overall in terms of critical thinking is think from both sides. If I wanted to make this argument better, that means I want to support it, I want to prove this right, what will I add to the information? And if I want to prove it wrong, I want to go to the opposite side and think critically against the argument, what will I do in that case? And doing that depends on first noticing the missing link, because the missing link then can be strengthened or weakened according to our needs. Ramesh went to St. Stephen's. He must be really smart. what is the missing link. Just like in the previous information, the missing link was y is equal to 4. In this case, there is also a missing link, otherwise the argument will not make sense. What is that link? Somebody says only smart people go to Saint Stephen. I don't need to add the only as such, but okay, yeah. So you're saying that smart people go to Saint Stephen. Only smart people go to Saint Stephen. He has gone to Saint Stephen. Therefore, he must be smart. Are we okay with the missing link? Right, Ashwarya says students going to St. Stephen's are smart. So any of this, I am not even going for too much analysis. I'm going, is there a missing link in between? Yes, there is a missing link. And the missing link was assuming that the St. Stephen people are smart, right? So this is going to be a major change in the way we analyze information. So far in our lives, we have just been accepting information. Somebody says, oh, he went to St. Stephen's, he must be smart. Now what we want to do is, we want to separate these two sentences and find the bridge, the link, the support structure in between. All of these visualizations also I'll add later. And so reading between the lines is what we mean by critical thinking. Are we okay and together so far in terms of what is the fundamental here? Let's try one more example. So I'm getting, so let me slow down with this example also. Ramesh went to St. Stephen's, and I say all people going to Stephen's are smart, and therefore he must be really smart. So now isn't it better? I've added that missing link, highlighted it, and therefore the argument becomes clearer, right? Or stronger even. Similarly, if I were to weaken it, if I attack this missing link, all people going to St. Stephen's are not smart, right? If I negate the reason, will the logic still make sense? Well, can I still say he must be really smart? No, I don't know. He has gone to St. Stephen's, but not all people going to St. Stephen's are really smart. So can I say for sure Ramesh is smart? No, I cannot. Are we okay with this game so far? Tell me yes or no. Right? So reading between the lines, finding the missing link, and then strengthening it or weakening it according to my need or the design of the question as such. So waiting for yes or no, that we have understood the journey so far. That what I did was, I'm separating the sentences and looking at a missing invisible sentence, and I will have to come up with it because the author is not going to give me the details everywhere, right? And it is a way of life, because in the real life we cannot present all data, so we eat up some data which is known to everyone. So a piece of information which is known to everyone, I can save my time by not saying it, but the trap is that people can also use this gap to manipulate the information, to give you bad arguments or corrupt arguments, and you will believe them because you're not paying attention to that missing link as such, right? So so far we have looked at what we mean by that assumption or the missing link. Somebody says, can this also be presented as all people who go to St. Stephen's become smart? Yeah, I will take any of these interpretations. Right now, I'm more focused on the stepping point. He went to St. Stephen's, but why is he smart? Because St. Stephen people are smart. Only people who are smart go to St. Stephen. Any such interpretation is okay. So I'm interested in that missing step and then going to the final conclusion that he is smart, right? And on that note, one more example, a very basic level argument. Let me get rid of. So notice in maths, it was so much more clear what is the missing link. But in language, you can frame it in a couple of ways. Right now, I wouldn't worry about it. Right now, I would just worry about the habit of separating the lines and spotting the missing link. In this, there is no missing link. I tell you, all politicians are corrupt, and Rakesh is a politician. What can you infer, or what can you deduce, or what can you conclude? Because this would be your other type of critical reasoning question. What can you infer? Some information is given to you. Can you put it together and come to a conclusion? And this is very, very easy. This is your basic deductive logic Venn diagram you can make. All politicians are corrupt. Rakesh is a politician. What can you conclude about Rakesh? Rakesh is corrupt, Rakesh is corrupt, Rakesh is corrupt. Great. So the moment so this is what you have to do in the exam also. It is just that instead of these very simple level sentences, you will have more complex pieces of information. But your game will be one of these only. Find the missing link, which is known as the find the assumption or spot the assumption question. An assumption is nothing but a reason which is important for the overall logic. That means if you negate it or if you go for the opposite of it, the logic should not work, right? Just the way if I change y is equal to 4 to y is equal to 5, x is equal to 3 will not work anymore, right? So then the next level of question is strengthen or weaken the argument. Even for that, spotting the assumption is a good idea. And then just knowing what do we mean by strengthening the conclusion. That means I want to add more support to it, I want to make it better. Weakening means I want to attack it. And then inference means what can I conclude from a given story or a few pieces of stories put together. Are we okay so far? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move towards actual question. Give me a second, I'll share the screen. I hope some of you have found the sheet at least. And Puma Shankar. So now that was the basic introduction, though there is a whole video on the foundations and more details, but the same idea in different words as such. Or in the course section, there are plenty of other videos covering the basics. So this was just a introduction, and such an introduction will always be added to any workshop because I always want to start with the foundation, right? So now we know the basic idea of an argument. Now we have a question on screen. Question number 4. I'm starting with this. We'll cover all of them between today and tomorrow. But starting with question number 4 and waiting for your answers. I will read it also very quickly. In 1998, more citizens from the country of Monrovia migrated from Monrovia to neighboring Abstania than during any prior year. Okay, stop, observe, assimilate. In 1998, the number of reported violent crimes in Abstania increased dramatically over 1997. The unavoidable conclusion is that Moravians who migrated from Monrovia to Abstania were responsible for this increase. Such a wonderful example, because this is how a politician may instigate let's say an audience against a particular community. So in the American, in the last presidential term, President Trump kept saying that these migrants who are coming are taking your jobs, right? Notice migrants have come, your jobs have gone down, it must be because of the migrants. So a very real world issue of sorts. Think of it like that first of all. and be very clear about the argument. The argument is that, let me see. I don't know what one person has given me an answer, option E. And one person says, is it for real, the question? I don't know what, as in terms of, is there a country called Monrovia and Abstania? I'm not very sure. So I hope the logic, first of all, it's faulty logic, or it could be faulty logic, and critical thinking basically means always look at it with a little bit of skepticism and be on the lookout for possible errors in the story, right? So he's saying, sounds very interesting, that more citizens from the country of Monrovia migrated to Abstania than any prior year. That means think of people going from Monrovia to Abstania. This particular year, maybe 100 people went from Monrovia to Abstania, and before this number was never 100. Maybe it was 95, 76, 55. But in this particular year, whatever is the number of people going from Monrovia to Abstania is the highest ever. And he's saying the crime has increased in the same year. So he's basically saying that the crime is happening because of Monrovians, right? So if I were to prove it wrong, the question is, which of the following statements, if true, would most seriously weaken the claim that Monrovians were responsible? So you want to prove this story wrong, that no, that crime, the increase in the rate of crime or increase in the number of crimes is not because of Monrovians. So you have to think what could be the... Okay, everybody has given me the answer. Not everybody, some people have given me the answer, and the answer so far is E. Any other options? E, another E. Any other options? Let's evaluate E. It says in 1998, fewer Monrovians migrated from Monrovia to Abstania than from Abstania to Monrovia. So take numbers to understand the sentence well. Fewer Monrovians migrated from Monrovia to Abstania than from Abstania to Monrovia. That means some Monrovians are coming back from Abstania also, right? So say the number going from Monrovia to Abstania was 100. This information is telling me the number of people going back from Abstania to Monrovia is 110, something like that. And this information tells me that the overall number of Monrovians has actually dropped in the story. If I look at 100 people came and 110 people left, so overall there is a reduction of 10 Monrovians. So actually the story is now that the Monrovians are reducing and the crime is going up. That means maybe Monrovians earlier, this is I am adding just for fun, maybe Monrovians earlier were somehow controlling the crime or suppressing the crime. Is everybody okay with why the answer is E, and very clearly E? Somebody says A, and great, I'm waiting for wrong answers, because remember we have 4 choices. Evaluating, selecting or rejecting, each is a critical thinking opportunity, argument analysis opportunity. So somebody said option A, each year more violent criminals are apprehended in Abstania than in Monrovia. So you're saying, oh, this sounds like, okay, I understand why somebody might think A. They're saying that Abstania there are more criminals, but the person who's making the argument will then say, yes, the more criminals are apprehended in Abstania because we have a better law system, but maybe those criminals which are being apprehended in Abstania are still Monrovians. So just saying that in Abstania more criminals are being apprehended does not attack the original argument. The original argument conclusion was that these Monrovians, they are coming, and because of that the crime is going up. This one is saying in Abstania there are more criminal violent criminals. But we still don't know whether these violent criminals are Abstanian or Moravian, so it doesn't do anything for the argument. The person who said A, did they get it? Aditi says, sir, can't it be that population moving from Abstania to Monrovia are Abstanian people? No, in this option it clearly says in 1998, fewer Monrovians migrated from Monrovia to Abstania than from Abstania to Monrovia. So the option, if you're looking at option E, it is very clearly saying we're talking about Monrovians only. And the person who said A, option A, is it clear why A might not work, or how to reject it after a minute of thinking that okay, yes, criminals are apprehended, but does it do anything to the original argument that the crimes are because of Monrovians? No, it does not. Or crimes are because of higher number of Monrovians? No, it does not. And look at option E and spend time with that again, that the argument was based on saying more Monrovians, more crime, therefore Monrovians are criminals or because of them it is happening. But then you realize if you look at E and consider it true, more Monrovians itself is not true. So how can you say the crimes are going because of more Monrovians? There must be some other reason. Are we okay with that? Any other option here? Yes. Let's try one more question. So this was a question about weakening the argument, and let's try one question about strengthening the argument. And I would not get stuck on the questions as such right now because this is early days, this is the beginning of the process. Right now I just want to get familiar with the game, right? What is the game? So try out the question, give me an answer or your choice, and then we'll evaluate it. The purpose of the proposed law requiring a doctor's prescription for obtaining hypodermic needles is to lower the incidence of drug related deaths, both accidental and intentional, involving hypodermic needles. But even knitting needles can be lethal if they fall into the wrong hands. Yet, everyone would agree that imposing legal restrictions on obtaining knitted needles would be preposterous. Hence, the proposed law involving hypodermic needles make no sense and should not be enacted. Hence tells me this is my final conclusion. And the question is, which of the following, if true, would provide the most support for the argument above? What is the argument above? And by the way, he's not just saying support the conclusion, he's saying support the argument. That means make the argument better. Preposterous means unbelievable or stupid. It's a preposterous proposition. Let's look at the exact meaning also. Why not? Preposterous. Contrary to reason or common sense, utterly absurd or ridiculous. Write it down somewhere. So that is the other part about any of the verbal sections, reading or critical thinking. Vocabulary investment will go a long way, and that's why so much work on vocabulary, the extra work on vocabulary, because once that is in place, you will find the logic part to be fairly easy. So Lekhang says A. And I hope the argument is fair. I mean, the thing is, this process of argument, we have all participated in our day-to-day lives. It is just this format of the question. And so this kind of an argument is very common, right? That there is a law saying that hypodermic needles should be banned, or there should be a doctor's prescription required. But accidents happen with anything. Will you ban everything? and therefore banning this particular activity also does not make sense. That kind of an argument, right? So also notice that this is a day-to-day common real life activity. So I've got answers. I've got A, C, C, C. I've got a lot of C's and an A. Okay, so let me tell you, and some of you who have picked up C, let me tell you why. I mean, C is close. If you wanted to support the conclusion, you want to support the conclusion. Conclusion is the law is bad and it should not be enacted. This is another reason for to not enact the law, to say the proposed law would not deter the sort of activity known to result in drug related deaths. If I give you this information, then again this final conclusion becomes bigger or better or more important as such, right? But a little trick here, just a little question thingy here. The question was which would provide the most support for the argument above, right? That means do not just focus on the conclusion, make the argument better, improve the quality of the argument. And therefore the definition of an argument, the argument is just not the conclusion, it is also the reason. So if you can make the conclusion structure better, that was the challenge here. And because C is not connecting to any of the reasons the author has given already, right? Somebody says E. Let me check E also. Knitting needles are not readily available to anybody who wants to obtain them. But if knitting needles are not readily available, incorrect, because he's saying that just the way are available, hypodermic needles should be available. Why? Because even knitting needles can hurt people, but nobody bans knitting needles. Therefore, why ban hypodermic needles, right? That's the game. So if the option E is in the opposite direction, option E is saying knitting needles are not readily available, that means my whole argument will become, okay, I'm sorry, then knitting needles are also under control. Therefore, hypodermic needles also should be under control. But you wanted to say, no, they should not be under control or doctor prescription. So E is not going to work for me. I hope we see why C also wasn't working. And I do understand if this was a tricky question very early in the process. That's why I started with question number 4, which is a show shot where you can see clearly the mathematical logic almost. And I went to this question next. Any other options? So guys, C is not going to work for me, and understand why. And I understand why you're getting confused, but pay attention as Chris Rock says to Jackie Chan. Pay attention to the words coming out of my mouth, right? What I'm saying is, yes, it is supporting the conclusion, but it is not improving the quality of the argument. So for example, when I looked at earlier, something like this, right? X plus y is equal to 7 and thus x is equal to 3. And I say support the conclusion. You could have said, yes, I also know the answer from the answer key. The answer is x is equal to 3. So yes, you are supporting the final conclusion, but you are doing nothing to the argument structure as such. Whereas if I add y is equal to 4 in the story, the argument itself improves, not just the conclusion that x is equal to 3, right? So C makes the argument, makes the conclusion stronger or supports the conclusion, but from a different direction altogether. Yes, the law, I mean, let me give you another reason. The hypodermic needle prescription should not be required because in village areas there is no doctor to write a prescription, but almost anybody can inject somebody, I mean, themselves, let's say in the case of an emergency, right? So even this will help to support the law to say I will not enable the law. But is it improving the argument? No, it is not improving the argument. I hope the idea is through. So the correct answer here is actually A. Knitting needles have been known to cause injury and death. Think of it this way. Make it the opposite. Say no injuries have ever happened with the knitting needles. Now look at the argument. The guy was saying that hypodermic needles require a prescription. But even knitting needles can cause injury. But if I come in and say ki bro, knitting needles nobody has ever died, but with hypodermic 1,000 people have died, so your comparison is not valid at all, right? So to make the argument better, I needed to make the knitting needles also similarly dangerous or up to the same mark maybe, or have some level of danger involved to them. If I give you a study saying that there have been zero deaths with the knitting needles, that would make the argument almost ridiculous, because he's saying compare it to knitting needles, but knitting needles are not dangerous at all. So you had to make them a little bit of danger, I mean, add a little bit of danger to their story, and that is what the option A is doing. Somebody has given me option D. Again, this is a separate story altogether. The proposed law could not be effectively enforced, which is another reason to not push the law. But it is not doing anything to the argument. And okay, understand that I understand that this is a tricky question. So get that going. But this improves the structure of the argument, because he was comparing it to knitting needles. And think of the opposite. Thinking of the opposite will always help a lot. The opposite scenario was that knitting needles are not dangerous at all. Now him saying that knitting needles are not, they don't require a license, why do you require a license for the hypodermic needle, will not make sense, because they're not dangerous at all. How are you comparing it to one to the other, right? You would say you are comparing apples and oranges as such. Are we okay with this? I'm trying to charge my phone, guys, and suddenly it's. Yes. Yes, it's charging now. So let's try one. We did this already. Okay. So right, the question is on your screen now. Try it out. And this is not strengthen or weaken, this is again a real life challenge. Imagine that you were running the alpha showground, what would you do? The story is given in front of you, so this is more like a case study. That means not just spotting the assumption, thinking of the overall situation and coming up with a solution, which is very much part of critical reasoning. Eight, two, 7. Are people telling me which questions to do? I'm eventually going to do all of them. I'm just trying, I always try to choose easy ones first so that everybody is comfortable and nobody gets discouraged in the beginning itself, right? So, but all of them are similar level. Question number 2, waiting for answers. 6 weekends each year, Alpha showgrounds are used exclusively for public horse shows. During all other weekends, the grounds are used exclusively as a public market. For its revenues, Alpha depends entirely on admission fees, and revenue from a typical weekend horse show is far greater than from a typical weekend market. However, Alpha's annual revenues from the market far exceed its annual revenues from the horse shows. Which of the following strategies, if implemented, would likely provide the greatest boost to Alpha's revenues? So basically, you are a business manager and you have to come up with a strategy to boost Alpha's revenues. The story is available to you. Articulate it a couple of times and look at the options. Option, I've got two people have given me option E as the answer. Somebody says option B, and okay, in such a question you will have to compare the options with each other, which one will give you a maximum boost. So let's do that. I've got a couple of options at least. Option B, increase the fee for admission to the horse show but leave the admission fee for the public market unchanged. Okay, so remember, only 6 weekends you have the horse show. It says increase the fee, but by how much? By 10%, by 20%, by 200%, and do a calculation in your head. 6 out of how many weekends in a year? 50, 55 weekends maybe. Only 6 weekends a horse show is happening. And at the all other days there is a market happening. So the big chunk of the revenue is coming from the market, right? The horse show is more profitable, but it is only on 6 weekends. So even if you increase the admission fee, how much is it going to add extra to the revenue, right? So this is how you have to evaluate. Any other options? Yes, somebody has given me a D as well. Schedule some horse shows for weekdays instead of weekends. Okay, horse shows for weekdays instead of weekends, and during those weekends use the grounds as public market instead. So, but aren't the horse shows more profitable? I know they happen on a weekend and they are more profitable than the market. So, on any given weekend, do I want to really remove the horse show? Because the horse show is far more, not far more, but profitable, more profitable than the market. So, on the same weekend, if I did the horse show, I would be more profitable. Why am I moving the horse show out, right? Are we okay with why, or let's say which one will make the most sense eventually? So somebody says D. I just covered D, right? I just covered D, guys. If your horse shows are more profitable than the market on the weekend, you are saying I will move the horse show somewhere on the weekday. I'm not sure whether they are profitable on a weekday or not. I definitely do know that they are profitable on the weekend, right? And they are more profitable than the market. You are removing the horse show and putting the market which is less profitable, and that means your revenue will drop overall, because the market is not, each market is not as valuable as each horse show. Just that there are a lot of market weekends, that's why the overall revenue gets higher for markets. So I hope we see why D is not the answer. If you did mark D, do drop me a comment saying that yes, I have understood. Any other choices, or I will go to E. Schedule some weekend markets for weekdays instead of weekends, and during those weekends use the grounds for horse shows instead. Compared to D, let's say, isn't E better? Move the market which is not profitable to the weekday and use the weekend for the horse show, which will give you higher profitability, and your market is also still happening on the weekday, so whatever is some extra revenue will come from there also. So overall your revenue is definitely going to be higher because the horse show is far more or more profitable. Are we okay with that? In the question, so sorry, he says, somebody says, sir, in the question there is no mention regarding the weekdays. Uh, but in the options you do have the weekdays, right? In three of your options you do have the weekdays. So I don't see a problem with that as such, right? What was your answer anyway? Lekang hasn't given me an answer, has he? B. Is it B? Okay, let's see B. Increase the fee for admission. Okay, this we covered earlier. But leave admission fee for the public market unchanged. So if your conclusion was, your answer was based on that weekdays were not given, it was also not given that you're not going to use the weekdays, right? 6 weekends each year, Alpha show grounds are used exclusively for public horse shows. During all other weekends, the grounds. So weekend the grounds are being used for that, but even weekdays the ground is available. No information is given to in that direction that no weekdays there is an office running there and nothing can happen there, right? So I have no reason to reject the weekday option as such. I hope that made sense. Yes, moving on. This is a super fun question. So I hope at this point of time you're also learning that I need to understand some key terms. What is an argument? What do we mean by weakening, strengthening, as such? But other than that, then it becomes just a game of common sense and language interpretation, which is very basic anyway, right? So, and you should also realize that such a game or such kinds of games you have been playing all your adult life anyway, with your friends, with your family. You should do this because of this. No, I will not do this because of that. Very basic level argument processes, right? Question number 3, please. During the past week, 120 Ramtech Corporation employees have reported symptoms of a strain of food poisoning known as Dysporella. But only 8 of these employees have tested positive for the strain. A Ramtech spokesperson claims that the apparent outbreak of Dysporella can be attributed to the contaminated food served 2 weeks ago at the company's annual employee picnic. Which of the following, if true, would most support the claim made by the Ramtech spokesperson above? So, focus on the question which most support the claim made by the Ramtech spokesperson above. So, first of all, zoom in to the claim. You want to support this claim. Focus there, and the question is very easy. Lose focus from that, and the question might become tricky. Okay, so I got an answer, option C from Aditi. People with Dysporella do not generally test positive for Dysporella until at least 1 week after Dysporella symptoms begin to occur. So, when you're looking at this information, you are trying to support this part of the story that only 8 of these employees have tested positive, 120 are showing symptoms, but only 8 have tested positive. This C supports that part of the story, that why only 8 are showing positive whereas 120 are showing symptoms, right? But the question was not this, the question was which of the following, if true, would support the claim made by the Ramtech spokesperson. And what was his claim? His claim was about the date of infection, not whether why some are showing infection, why some are showing symptoms but not testing positive as such, but the date of or the cause of infection, right? So I hope we see the problem with option C. And then everybody has given me option D as the correct answer, which is great. Why? Because people with dysporella often do not exhibit dysporella symptoms until more than a week after contracting dysporella. That means if 2 weeks back the event happened, them showing symptoms last week is logical, right? Again, to better understand it, go for the opposite direction. Say people with dysporella exhibit symptoms immediately the day they get the infection, and then you will think, why is the Ramtech spokesperson saying the infection happened 2 weeks back? Because if the infection happened 2 weeks back, the symptoms should have happened the next day only. Why is there a gap in the symptoms? And the Ramtech spokesperson's claim will slightly fall apart. Are we getting this idea of thinking in the opposite direction? Or essentially, this is pretty much the definition of critical thinking reasoning, thinking from all possible sides as such, right? So I'm guessing everybody got the answer here. And if they were confused in option C, why? I understand why they were confused, because they were trying to address this part of the story, that 120 are showing symptoms, only 8 are tested positive, and this story tells me, the C part tells me that yes, that the positive testing comes 1 week later, and that's why they have not tested positive, which is all fine. But what was the question? The question was support the Ramtech spokesperson, not the problem in the data of symptoms versus testing positive. Are we okay with this? Yes? So, enough questions. I think what I now want to do is I shared this yesterday. Let me see if I can find it. I have been saying forever that this critical reasoning skill is the most important skill for everyone to learn for day-to-day life, for participating in the knowledge economy, or just surviving as a citizen as such, right? And I don't know how much you guys believe that or listen to that or like really follow that on that advice, right? So I'm looking at essentially proof to give you guys that yes, what I'm saying is important. So I googled this most important 21st century skills. You can do that with me right now. And the number one was critical thinking. The brains icon, I have added using my chat icons. But so that's how important and that's how realistic this skill is. Yes, we are doing it in an exam format with questions and options and whatnot. But as we do these questions, our skills in terms of thinking from different directions, looking or reading between the lines, spotting the assumption, being able to strengthen or weaken from both sides is what we want to learn. So maybe that's it for the questions today. And maybe the homework could be find out, Google the importance of critical thinking, why is it necessary for life, and share it with others. In fact, everything, right? When somebody is trying to sell you a shampoo and they say this has ZPTO, everybody is making an argument all the time, from politics to the advertiser in your day-to-day life. When you work for a company, you will do the same thing. I think we should put up these posters on this road and not on that road, because this road is used by college students, which is not our audience, and so on and so forth, right? So get familiar with the process and get better at it. I've also mentioned this earlier, employers are dying for people with basic critical thinking and reading, communication, vocabulary, etc. kind of skills as well, right? In fact, if I go back to that, what are the most important 21st century skills? You will see critical thinking. Next one is creativity. Next one is collaboration. The ability to work with other people, right? Basic kind of thing. Communication skills, right? Nobody is asking for algebra, calculus. People are asking for critical thinking as a top skill right now, right? So that would be the parting shot for now. That maybe spend one more day trying to understand the importance or the significance of it, right? And this is not the only format. The question answer format is not the only format. If you look at a newspaper, he is trying to make an argument in the editorials, he as in the author, or in a lot of newspapers you will find a view counter view kind of an article, the same idea supported by one person and attacked by another person. So start reading these kind of articles or start looking for this kind of process. And there are very famous debates also on YouTube, right? Between an atheist and a Christian, right? Whether God is real or not. I will share some of those as well. So it's a fascinating, wonderfully important and a powerful tool to have in your arsenal, not only for the exam but as a real world citizen tool as such, right? So do spend some time reading up about it. This journey will continue, especially I think, let me just check. Try out the rest of the questions, we'll discuss it soon enough. And if you're a course member, log into the critical reasoning section, and it is already loaded with hundreds of these questions and more. I'll keep doing along. The extra that we do along is to keep you engaged and to remind you that okay, this is the topic of the week, this is what you have to do. But as far as exposure or like even it might be difficult to finish the goal also. If I say finish it in 8-10 days, you might not be able to do that. So do it in small pockets, 4-5 videos every week. Then maybe you can take a break from critical thinking and come back to the rest of the section after a week or so, right? So if you're a course member, please log in and be committed to finish it by the weekend. Spend a continuous amount of time with the subject. That means morning, evening, afternoon, you're following a subject. You're not just saying okay, I did one class, I did 5 questions and I'm done. I want to pursue the subject till the end and see that improvement in 3 to 4 days or 5 to 7 days or 8 to 10 days as such. And if it is not happening, the problem is not in logic, the problem is in vocabulary and basic reading. Invest there and everything will be sorted. Right, so that's it for the day. Aditi, I will get back to your answer individually via chat in a second. So we have done 5 questions today, 5 more tomorrow and 5 more the day after. Aim at doing 100 questions this week and the topic will be sorted. After that, exam practice is infinite. You keep finding questions in your mocks or test or your past year's paper as such. But get the process going and get comfortable with it, right? So that's it. I shall see you guys soon. This is it for the day. My name is Ankur Suryavanshi. The link to my course site can be found below in the description box. Please sign up, get a user ID going, because as the course progresses, more of these documents will just be put up on the site and will not always be available out in the open domain as such. So yes, very much critical thinking and that decision making are identical to each other almost, not too much of a difference there. And in the core section you also have a dedicated that section, but I would not worry about it right now. I would only do the that section after the CAT is over. Till that time we will just think of critical thinking and overall reading skills as such. So but that's it for now. I will see you really soon with the next session. There is another one lined up tonight for reading comprehension. If things go well, we'll do that as well, right? So that's it. Bye.